There was a Serbian basketball player in the Nuggets gym today, but not that one. We got some news as Malone speaks with the media for the first time since Tim Connelly's departure. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the finals because it's really good basketball. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show, join the chat section, have yourselves a good time. Get in on this Built Bar action that apparently Josh Winninger is in the comments talking about. Well, unless you know, today's podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code NBA or go to the App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network and a big Colorado Avalanche fan. Go Avs. Very glad to hear that Darcy is 100% for the start of the series. Very excited about that. I'm also wearing my Colorado Rapids.
Look at you. You embrace everyone but the Nuggets.
I'm good with it. I'm a fan of everybody but the Nuggets. Can't be a fan of the team I cover. So
you're not a fan of the Broncos either. Let's not kid ourselves. Come on. It's all right. Move on. I know you have a
I don't even let it comment. I don't even get to talk about it. On today's show, Nicole, is his name, how is his first
Jovic.
name? No, his first name.
Nikola.
The same thing? Okay, Nikola Jovic.
Well, to be fair, I don't know that. I assume it's Nikola. So I can't confirm.
Okay. N. Jovic was in the gym today, along with a host of other candidates for a Nuggets workout. We're going to talk a little bit about him, compare him with who I think the Nuggets should take if he's available, which I don't think that person will be at their spot 21. We'll also get into Michael Malone's comments as he met with the media and answer some questions about where he's at in the process. Some good stuff from Adam asking about defensive coverages and things like that. And in the third segment, we'll talk about the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors. They get ready for Game 4 of the NBA Finals. Adam, welcome back from practice from the workout, from the draft workout. Were the kids excited? Were they all excited to be in the gym?
Yeah, I think everybody's always happy when you're back. There's something to do. And then we got the added surprise of getting to talk to Michael Malone today, which is also great. And a second added surprise, which was Jamal Murray was in the house, as we found out later. I know we'll talk about it, but that he had been around. So it was good to see Jamal. It was good to see Michael Malone and the rest of the crew. And it was good to kind of get a first look in person of Nikola Jovic.
All right, so the report that I got was he looked good. Shot the ball well, even though Ryan Blackburn described his jumper as a little flat. I heard from Nuggets folks they weren't concerned about it and thought that he made some really good passes today. Did you have any sort of impression on Jovic and how he looked? I know that, unsurprisingly, Miroslav, very, very excited for this one in particular. So we could have look, everybody kind of wants this to happen because it's Jovic and Jokic, but how did the kid actually look today, do you think?
When you say this, Matt, how did he look? I mean, he just shot jumpers in the portion that we saw, so I don't know. I did talk to some people. They said he thought he had a very good workout, like an impressive workout, and that he's an impressive basketball player. That was one of the words I heard for today. He's an impressive basketball player. If you ask me sort of the things that you can take away, it's funny that Ryan, our friend and colleague Ryan Blackbird, said his shot was flat. That's not the thing I would have pointed out about it. To me, it's more that it's not a very smooth looking shot to me. It kind of comes across his body a little bit. It almost looks like you see this often with young players where they've gotten used to shooting a ball that's like too heavy to get the distance. He kind of shoots a heavy basketball, I would say. He can make it a little bit more of an effortless shot. So I was unimpressed with just what his shot looked like. But I was very impressed with his build. I mean, he's measured 6'11" at the combine, and today, looking at him, he looked every bit as tall, if not taller, than Michael Porter Jr., which is to say Michael Porter Jr. is like freakishly tall for a guy that plays perimeter basketball. So that was the thing that stood out to me is he really is a tall player.
All is good. We like tall players. That they're good at basketball. This is like the trend now. You had Poku, and then there's obviously Chet Holmgren this year and Jovic to a certain degree. And then like next year's number one pick. Have you seen this kid? Wembanyama?
Oh, by all accounts, what is it? Mike Schmitz calls him like the best prospect since LeBron. And this includes like Luka and everything else. So he might be a generational talent. Might be.
it's just like it's crazy watching these guys. They're giraffes that just dribble
So
around
tall,
and
I
take
know.
like it's crazy.
Yeah.
I also want them to eat like a steak, but I think with Jovic, what I've seen from him, I did some of the film work on him. Like the passing really does stand out to me, and the Nuggets prioritize
Yeah.
that. For as much as they're going to try and I think reconfigure some of the stuff that they're doing, that stuff I think will be done in the veteran angle where you've guys that know how to make X passes. But if you're picking players, I think passing skill is good because it indicates an initial understanding of reads and how to see the whole floor as opposed to what's just in front of you, right?
It's one of the things that I just don't know that you can teach. It can be developed. There is sort of an innate, untapped passing that we have seen from players that as their career goes on, it gets unlocked. But I think when you see good passing and good vision and good feel like that, it's one of those things where you go, oh, it's nice to see that a player who, by the way, is one of the youngest players in the draft, it's nice to see that he has that sort of already built in. So the passing from him is by far, if you're trying to be sold on Nikola Jovic, that would be it, is that he's 6'11" and sort of has this great vision, not just as a passer, but also as a guy that reads the court very well and knows when to cut, knows how to connect. And in a Jokic ball system, it's funny at 6'11", you just kind of naturally, when they say they're a forward, you just slot him into power forward. Like, okay, he must be that. Everybody keeps saying he's more of a small forward, like a giant small forward, which I don't know what to make of. But a guy that could pass like that and be a connector, I think would be really interesting in a Denver system.
A center from San Diego, Terrell Brown, worked out as well. Did you see anything from him in the workout?
The only other guy we spoke to, I think it's Kokolo. Is that correct? From Arizona, who, by the way, we found out was Zeke Najee's best friend. He's a third-year player, so they were both freshmen together at the University of Arizona, and apparently very close friends. So he was the only other guy we talked to. And again, when you say did we get to see him, really it's just shooting drills. And Jovic was the guy that was on the near court, I think by design, and so that was the guy I think I was kind of keyed in on.
They used to do this where you actually, what they would do is it would be a little bit more off record, but the people that were allowed to come could actually like see the thing. Like it would just be like, yeah, like it used to be.
Never while I was there. This predates.
Yeah, me. way back. But then like this all kind of goes like back even further where you used to be able to, like the beat writer could just watch practice. Like that used to be a thing that they would allow. Like, can you imagine ever being allowed in on practice? Like, can you imagine how much Malone would lose his shit if he saw one of us in the practice? Someone asked if it's normal for teams to hold their stuff in the practice facility. Yeah, like this is totally normal. And so there's agency workouts where an agency will sign however many guys and they'll hold a pro day. The Nuggets went to one in Miami. That's an example of one. There's lots that happen in California. There's usually one that happens at IMG in Orlando. There's usually one that happens in one of the other P3 in LA is another one that gets the P3 is a facility in LA and Vegas, right. I think. And so there'll be these like different workouts. And then you have, I don't mean to do this, but if you're not going to be in the lottery, then you will wind up traveling to a lot of these places, especially the second round picks will do a lot of these kind of workouts. So pretty normal stuff. So we didn't get to see a lot of these guys. The only thing that I will really kind of note, it was, look, Roddy was in that workout the other day and he's going to get a lot of the attention because of Colorado. To me, I don't think he's going to be there. I think he goes top 20, but I think Wendell Moore is a great fit for Denver.
It's interesting that you have him because I'm looking at the Ringers mock draft and they have him at 35. So there's some intel you're seeing that is he a guy that has risen a lot or is
he's done some workouts. I've seen him. I'm trying to remember where. I think it's because most of the draft consultant guys that I follow and talk to, they're very high on it. They're higher on him necessarily than like some of the mock drafts.
Tell me about him.
I will say this, like I don't have the full scouting report on him. The starting point for me oftentimes is based off of school because certain schools are gravitated to certain types of players. Okay. Like I like Michigan State guys. That's like always been my thing is like, I like Michigan State dudes. They play hard, they play smart, they play tough. That's just always been the thing under Izzo. So with Duke, obviously like there are the 5-star candidates and sometimes they're space cadets, but sometimes also they're just exceptionally talented guys. 6'5" with a 7-foot wingspan, I think is really good. He's got the defensive potential, and everything that I've kind of seen is like there's a real capacity there for him. I think he fits a need, especially, if the Nuggets were, if he is like, if I'm wrong and he's going to go later, it's not entirely possible. Okay. If he's going to go later, that opens up the possibility of a trade back. And that could be like a really intriguing option, right? If you can move back and get more and then also be able to pick up an asset, I think that's an ideal fit for Denver. To me, like to me, he is a guy that I have circled for quite a while that could be in that range, but I think he goes higher.
So it's interesting. Like if I look at just the KOC scouting report, the first thing he does is the shades of, the guy. Who does he remind you of? And Josh Green, who came out of the draft last year, or the year before, I can't remember.
Super athletic. Yep.
Yeah, athletic defensive guy, though, about 6'5", which is what he is. Josh Hart, which is, of course, is a big name here amongst Nuggets fans, and then Gary Harris, which is another big name. And I like it because it's like, if you just talk about, we've talked about this a lot on the show, but I think it's obvious the spots and types of player Denver needs. And I don't know if he is good enough to be that, but he is the mold of that. Like the shooting guard, defensive minded, good wingspan, on ball and off ball defender, plays really hard, good motor. Okay, so just without ever watching tape of him and really not knowing a whole lot about him, he at least is packaged as the type of player that Denver needs.
Yes. So that's all kind of part of the equation there.
You also have the whole thing with Duke where, like, sometimes, especially Kentucky, Duke, whatever, sometimes you are asked to do less than what you're capable of. And some of these guys, I mean, he's a junior, so this is probably less likely, but nonetheless, like maybe there is some untapped potential in him that he had to sacrifice as being part of that program.
20 plus, I'm okay taking the guy that's older. Like that's, I don't think you should be taking 23-year-olds.
I agree.
If you have a pick in the lottery or the teens, I just don't think it's a good idea to take a guy that's a third year or later. Yeah. There are exceptions, right? Like if you just really like a guy, it's fine. But I'm just saying as like a general starting point as a prior, I think that's pretty good. But I think if you're above 20, I think you're fine to take it. Let's take a break.
Think when let me just say one thing. When you're Denver, you probably, if your player really is an upside piece, you're probably not going to be able to afford him anyway. So like the idea of you draft a guy for 4 years, that might be the smartest route anyway. You need a guy for 4 years, and then you're going to have that carousel going.
Zamora says, I'm wondering, though, should a good offensive player fall to us? Wouldn't it be wise to draft them instead of fit and then get a guy who fits better through trade free agency? Yeah. Like, I am essentially off of fit. The only thing with fit that I'll say is you don't draft. What you don't do in the 20s is you don't draft a guy in the first round, I'll say. You shouldn't draft a guy that, if you have intentions of keeping him, if you're absolutely stocked at that position. If you have
it won't get on the court.
Yeah. If you have 4 wings that are all under the age of 26, and including like a star that's going to play 30 minutes, you're just not going to do anything with him. So like, how are you ever going to find out what he's capable of? Right. That's the only thing I think where fit comes in. Everything else should be talent. It really should be. So Wendell Moore, I like a lot as independently. I just like him as an option, but I also think that there's probably, if there's like a real star offensive talent there, you probably take him. Like they took Bones, right? Like Bones wasn't, I don't necessarily think was what they needed to take with that pick, but Bones was one of the better picks of the draft. So good options there. Let's take a break. We'll come back, and Michael Malone had quite a bit to say at availability. I was not there. Adam will fill us in on the big takeaways and his reactions to them when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, Adam, you have something to tell us about Effortless Rehab.
Effortless Rehab and Dr. Robert Weisfeld, who I've gotten to know pretty well here over the last couple of weeks. Why? Because he is a big-time Locked On Nuggets listener, Denver Nuggets super fan, not just little fan, super fan, and because he is one of very few doctors who is practicing this new type of, or I shouldn't say new, it's been around for quite a while, this type of rehab called AMIT. And the gist of it is, if I can kind of paraphrase this, you have muscles, you have a traumatic injury. And this can be, by the way, like me, where I tore my quadricep tendon, or it could be something as simple as maybe you have some back pain, neck pain, carpal tunnel, like office type injuries where a long time hunched over, you kind of developed a little, issue here or there. One of the things that happens with those injuries is you get muscles that will turn off. They'll kind of go dormant and they won't come back. This is exactly the sensation when he was talking to me about it. It's exactly the thing I would describe with my left leg, which is when the injury happened, certain muscles came back, but certain muscles didn't, no matter how much I would rehab and work out. Well, apparently this is a common thing, and he has a procedure that he does that is a little bit unique, a little bit, something different. I compare it to like acupuncture or chiropractic work, where it's a little bit outside. You're not like doing towel scrunches and this or that. Instead, he is testing all of the different muscles in a certain muscle group. In my leg, my quadricep tendon. He's testing all these different subgroups of muscles and seeing which ones are firing normally and which ones are not. And then through that process, he can kind of identify and isolate and work through to try to turn those back on. And for me, all I can tell you about for me is I saw a real difference when I did this. We did a certain going up and down stairs, doing one-legged squats before to kind of show a baseline. These are things that I've been trying for years and years. Then after going through about a 2-hour procedure with him, saw a nice little bump, a little boost in how that procedure had sort of helped turn those muscles back on. So right now you can, if you're interested about this process, you can give it a try right now for a price of just $35 for one area. If you go to effortlessrehab.com/appointments to make an appointment online, or you can call 303-300-3933. Again, that's Effortless Rehab, Dr. Robert Weisfeld, $35 for one area at effortlessrehab.com/appointments.
And I got to tell you about PrizePicks. Are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? You got to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy. It's free to use. You just pick 2 to 5 players and over/under on their projections. I got over on Wiggins points and rebounds tonight. I think Wiggins is going to be the number 2 guy for Golden State in Game 4 as I expect them to tie it up. I'm not betting it. I expect them to tie it up. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, and you can get the app on both the App Store and Google Play. For a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. You get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you have to use code NBA. That's right, it's an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use code NBA and get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making us part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We do have a request for you. We want to know more about what you think about the shows and the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about the Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards, which will get you 1/100th of a finals ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thanks for your help. I looked at tickets to try and surprise my wife. I was like, you know what? I won a bunch of money on betting on the Celtics and Warriors to make the finals. I'm going to go and check out and try and get my wife a finals, get some finals ticket. And I opened up the Ticketmaster and oh my God, my heart fell into my bottom parts. It was so bad. I don't know how anyone affords to go to any of these games. It's absolutely, I can't imagine what it's going to be like for the finals. If the Nuggets make it within the NBA. All right, Adam. So let's start here. You sent me over the audio. You were kind enough to send me the audio of Michael Malone meeting with the media. Let's start here. What was his reaction to the Tim Connelly news and that experience? They tried to start off the presser with the positive, let's talk about going to see Nikola some more. And I was like, okay, but we have other things to probably get to. What is your takeaway on Malone's reaction to Tim Connelly's departure?
Well, first of all, when you say they, it was just a reporter. I don't think it was anybody in particular. You know how a scrum works is usually just whoever asked the first question. So I don't think that was an intentional, let's set the mood light or anything like that. I think there was 2 goals for Michael Malone today in his presser, and it's kind of funny. The Tim Connelly stuff has really died down. I really don't think it's much of a conversation around Nuggets Nation, Nuggets analysis, or any of that stuff. We've kind of had all angles covered. But it was good to hear Michael Malone just kind of chime in, and I thought, had 2 approaches. One, to talk about how important Tim Connelly is to him, both personally but also professionally, and how much gratitude he has for Tim Connelly. I thought he was the most effusive of anybody I've heard so far in sort of praising Tim and what he's done. But at the same time, he also says nothing changes, and he wants everyone to kind of know that players, coaching staff, everybody in the building, they feel like this is not a very big deal. In fact, I think the thing he said was this whole thing got blown out of proportion. Nothing if this building is going to change. And I thought that was interesting. So he did a good job, I think, of towing the line between saying hey, we're fine, while not necessarily throwing Tim Connelly under the bus the way I feel like maybe has happened for some other people.
Thanks for reading the notes transcript that gets sent over, Michael. Appreciate that. So I thought when I listened to it, one of the interesting things I think that kind of stands out, and like, look, I'm honestly like, I said this like 3 episodes on Connelly ago. Like, I'm ready to move on. We had to do reaction to the Kroenke presser. We only get to talk to him every couple of years, and it's major. But like, I'm really ready to be like, okay, Tim's got a new job. Calvin's in charge. The Nuggets move on. There's no like, they are not. And I wrote about this over to Action Network. Like, they're not in disarray.
Right.
There's talk. I've talked to a few people in the organization, and like, there's no sense of just like, what the hell are we doing?
Well, I'll tell you what, though, Matt, part of this is because I think like when being in the building today I think it felt even more like that. Just kind of like, okay, things are moving along. Like this is, whatever. I think that, enough people have made reference to this. This is a thing that had been happening for 2 months. Like, this is not a like, oh my God, this all happened the way we talked about it. So I think that there was a lot of, this was already fully processed. And then it kind of kicked up again once there was media and Josh talked and this or that. But I think for the most part, like, this organization has been operating, if not under the assumption it would happen, under the realization that it was a very real possibility. And so it's not that surprising to them. They're even more moved on, I think, than you, I, or the people listening to this.
That makes sense. I'll talk about one of the major things that I took away from it. This is a small thing, but it matters to me. He mentioned that Davon Reed's been in the gym.
It's not a small thing.
That to me is like that's a roster spot, right? And they liked what he brought last year, and Malone played him, and ultimately they made the decision not to convert him. We talked a lot about that decision, but it does seem like they are ready to promote, like, for him being in the gym. And like, look, it could just be like, well, he had a house here or he had an apartment and he's still waiting out the lease, whatever. And if they don't like make a commitment in free agency, then there's a chance another team will get him, but I don't think that's likely. So I would, at this point, like, I'd say I expect Davon Reed to be part of the team, of the roster next year, regardless of whether he's part of the rotation or not.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that I have the exact same thought. Sorry, somebody texted me here, an important thing. So to me, it reminds me of Monte Morris, reminds me of PJ Dozier, guys that spent 1 year where you felt like they're probably good enough to get minutes, but they're in their G League year, they're in their two-way year. And then the next year they get converted and it's like, okay, now here they are. So to me, Davon very much has always felt that way. But the fact that he was singled out as one of the guys that has been in the gym and this or that, like, to me, it's like he's already being acting himself as, and it sounds like the team is talking about him as if he were a piece of the 2023 Nuggets, which I suspect he will be. I'm with you. I think that was a big detail.
He talked about defensive schemes and personnel, and very understandably, he focused in on like who the Celtics have. And he also talked about this in terms of, like, we have to work within the structure of our team, right? Like, we're never going to be asking Nikola to go out and switch all in these types of situations, which I think is helpful. I have some more thoughts on that, but I want to get your read on his reaction to those comments, and then we can get whatever the other big things you thought were.
So some of the other comments, I mean, the funny stuff out of the way. He talked about being in Copenhagen for a concert with Nathaniel Rateliff. Those two really are like best friends somehow. Right. It's like not an act. That's his best buddy, and it just cracks me up so much. But the big thing to me, if you ask me, like, what do I take away from the media availability outside of him just sharing the Tim Connelly perspective, the big thing to me was watching the finals. One of the big stories, I know we'll talk about this in the second segment, but one of the big stories is that the death of the center, or the positionally versatile center, has won the year. It doesn't win every year, but this year it won. When you talk about who was left standing there at the end, the teams that didn't necessarily rely on a center for offense were very good. And then the teams that have been very good, Al Horford, Kevon Looney, Draymond Green, these are guys that are not like typical centers. These guys are guys that are defensive-minded, switch everything types. And Michael Malone took note of that. One, you have to look at this and say four of the five remaining teams were top five in – I'm sorry, the final four remaining teams were all top five in defensive rating. And then you just look at how many good defenders and how much they could switch. And he said that's a lesson that we as an organization have to learn. Now the question becomes, and I asked it, well, Jokic is not one of those guys. So what do you mean when the team does that? And he said, well, we look at ways we can do that more. And especially when he's not on the court, can we become a team that has that look? Meaning, can we go to a switch everything style, either when he's not on the court or sometimes maybe strategically away from Jokic, for certain parts of a series or what have you. So I just thought it was a really interesting thing because he kind of laid out a thing that's impossible for Denver, but still said there were lessons to be learned from it.
Well, here's an interesting thing. So I thought Robert Williams would get played off in the series, and he hasn't been. And we're going to talk about more about the finals in the last segment. But one of the things that Boston has done to avoid this has been pre-switching. Yeah. They've just done pre-switching a lot, and they've hidden Williams. I looked at some of the half-court matchup data. Yeah. Williams is on Klay Thompson a lot.
Right, yeah.
Right, and you look at that and you say, like, well, I don't want Nikola Jovic guarding Klay Thompson. It's like, okay, no. But the point here is, like, maybe you put him on somebody else. And the Warriors, I think we saw this over the last 3 games of that series, are not that bad of a matchup when the Nuggets are able to kind of settle in, especially if you look at their ability, if they're able to score and get back on defense a little bit. So my takeaway here is, like, look, what it may mean is, instead of going, the option's never going to be, let's take Nikola Jovic off the floor. It's never going to be the option, right? This is one of the things is, you can't do that if you have Rudy Gobert. You have to have Gobert on the floor because you pay him so much.
Right.
That's Gobert, though. Like, Jokic is just a matter of, he's too good, so he's got to stay on the floor. Like, your best chance of winning is always Nikola's on the floor. But so then maybe it's, okay, let's put another power forward that's really versatile next to him to be able to play whatever coverage they need to play and change that up. Because honestly, the Celtics did play a lot of drop coverage versus Miami, and it worked fine because Kyle Lowry was a bag of nothingness, of peanut butter. So you have, like,
honestly, they even continue to do it against Steph to some degree. And there were some nice comments after the game where they talked about, like, look, if Steph goes off, we can manage it. Some nights he'll just beat you, but we can manage it. We can't let them get the ball moving. Like, we have to cut that off. And then also, I think there's something too. It's a little bit easier to play drop when you have one player, if not 2 players on the court that don't have to be guarded. I know we're going to get into this more in the next series, but that's a big part of it. But nonetheless, I look at it. It's funny, Matt, because I almost, as the playoffs play out, you look at this and you go, I'm not necessarily worried, like, how does Denver match up with Golden State? I think Denver can beat Golden State in the exact way that we sort of anticipate. Jokic, we know, can dominate them. And once you get the more weapons around them, I think Denver can just kind of run with them and score with them and all of this. And they do need to get better defensively. But I look at the Boston Celtics, and that's the team I look at, and I go, well, Robert Williams, Jokic beats everyone. Everybody is food to him. But Robert Williams is tough. Like, that's not easy. Al Horford is tough. That's not easy. He's still going to make them work. And I look at that, plus all the other defense they have. That's the team that I look at, and I go, if we extrapolate down the road, that might be a team that presents challenges to Denver that are kind of unique.
Yeah. And Malone mentioned this in terms of, there's nobody on the floor that's a defensive liability.
0.
This really is it's a big thing.
Like, they would go after Derek White, who's, like, not a great defender, but he's, like, on Denver, he'd be, like, above average.
Yes. Yeah. Like, Derek White, I think I would challenge that Derek White would probably be, of the rotation guys, Derek White's probably the 3rd best defender on the Nuggets if he was on there. So that's
either way, it is a lot. I mean, when you talk about Al Horford and Grant Williams and Robert Williams and Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum and Chandler, like, you just go down the list and you're like, yeah, these guys are all not just good. They're, like, great defensive players.
I think it's good that Malone's in on these workouts. I think it's good that Malone is so engaged and involved. I think it's good that Malone is. It seems like he's in the right headspace that you would want him to be in for this spot in the year.
I'll tell you what, I said this over on DNVR earlier, but Malone to me was probably, if you made a list of guys that need a break, I think Malone was number 1 ahead of Jokic. I think he needed this, like, long off season. And even just seeing him today, I thought he looks better than he did last time I saw him.
Yeah, so it should be a good setup. We'll take a break. We'll talk more about the finals, and we'll wrap up coverage here on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I've got to tell you about Rock Auto. The ever-increasing number of makes and models, I've got to speak. It's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand that their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. RockAuto.com is a family business, and they've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer, and they've got everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box, they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. at rockauto.com. Also, today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. That's right, it's Built Bar time. Don't you love a chewy chocolatey brownie? What about caramel brownie with do you say caramel or caramel?
Caramel. It's caramel, girl. Come on,
caramel?
man. We're in Colorado. Where are we at? Arkansas? Come on.
Caramel? Yeah, it's caramel. It's caramel.
It's caramel.
Caramel. The dumbest pronunciation I have ever heard is my wife, who says measurement is measurement, and I laugh at her every time.
Right.
She hates me.
No. Yeah,
it's got caramel swirled on top. So good. What if I told you you could have all that chewy, chocolatey deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein? You're in luck, because caramel brownie. Now I'm overthinking it. Caramel brownie Built Bars are available at built.com right now, and you got to act fast because they're a fan favorite. Forget about dessert. These are better than dessert. Only 130 calories, only 17 grams. They've got 17 grams of protein and only 4 grams of sugar. I'd replace a regular brownie with Built's caramel brownie bar in a heartbeat. All of Built's bars are made with collagen protein, which helps your body absorb more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Go to built.com and get your box of caramel brownie bars now. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your first order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making this part of your day and your first listen. Make sure to check out the Locked On NBA Big Board. It's got Rafael Barlow and Richard Stayman and Sam Ferris and Leif Thulin, and they give you an in-depth look at the NBA draft. I've started diving on these guys, but it's very early. So if you want the big deep dives, go to people that know about this stuff. Go check it out on the Locked On NBA Big Board. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much for tuning in. All right, Adam, tonight's game 4 between the Warriors and the Nuggets. As you listen to this, it may not Nuggets, Warriors and Celtics. I don't know what's wrong with me today. I'm expecting a Warriors win. As if you listen to this game may be over, so that may be crazy. I still think the Celtics are winning the series, but I'm kind of expecting a Warriors win tonight.
Interesting. Steph Curry's injury obviously is a big piece of this. We'll see how healthy he looks and because I think that the Celtics are the better team. So every little margin matters. And if you're talking about an injury to a best player, even if it's play through it, but he just, not quite as explosive or can't shoot from his deep or what have you, it just tilts this so hard. This series is interesting though to me, Matt. This happens every year. When a team loses, no matter where it is in the playoffs, it's usually because another team was able to either find a flaw, or at least if it's not a big flaw, they just found an edge that tilted things in their way. And if it happens in the first round, you're like, this team is tragically flawed. Look what happened. Well, whatever. If it happens in the finals though, right now, the Warriors have looked like the old Warriors for quite a while, and they haven't necessarily looked flawed. We knew where their weaknesses were and their strengths, but they haven't looked flawed. The way the Celtics have managed to sort of put Draymond Green in the torture chamber on multiple levels. Number one, not guarding him and daring him to score. Obviously, Draymond Green has always struggled to score, but especially so in these more recent years. Last year was a huge item of discussion. You can't just be out there making passes. You got to score. He's not doing that in that series. But number two, he guards extremely well and he passes extremely well, but they have put big bodies out on the court, and it's not necessarily to guard him. They're using Marcus Smart to guard him, but I think it's been to make him not a rebounder. So it's one of these things where there's things he can do and there's things he can't do, and rebound is one of them. But if you just take away the rebounding, and even if you don't take it away, if you just make him box out Robert Williams and Al Horford and Grant Williams every single time, I think it uses up even a little bit more energy. So to me, I look at this and I go, the Warriors look like a flawed basketball team in this series, in part because I think the Celtics have the personnel and the ability and have figured out how to make him the worst version of himself.
A lot of that is we talked about this with the drop stuff. The Celtics are not blitzing Steph.
Yeah.
They won't do it. No matter what, he may score 50 on them and they're still going to be like, nope, we're not putting 2 on you. We're not letting you get the 4 on 3 break.
That's where, and this is part of what's funny is they're not just it's because they're not necessarily taking away Steph. They're taking away Draymond. Draymond's effectiveness isn't that ball is popping. He's moving it. You take that out and all of a sudden it's like, yes, Steph, you got to go for 50, 60. You might have to go for more than 50 to win. I would not be surprised if Steph dropped a 50 in the series and they didn't win just based on how much they have made everything else get stuck in the mud.
Yeah, because you'll notice on those kickouts, so like because they can't really use Draymond in the pick and roll because they're not switching it, because they're switching it or playing at the level, then they're playing at the level but not hard, right? Like if Draymond rolls hard, someone's picking him up. So it's not an option just to pass to him on the, because that's what the Warriors want, is they want you to double and then step passes on the short roll.
Well,
and now Draymond has the lob to Looney or to a
Yeah.
cutter or the kick out to Klay Thompson or Gary Payton or Jordan Poole for three in the corner. And they're
Right.
just taking that entire mechanism and being like, no matter what, you don't get that. That's what we're taking away. And that's
I think some of this
fascinating.
is they have the personnel. Like they have three really good front court defenders in Grant Williams and Robert Williams and Al Horford. And part of this is like Draymond has already lost a lot of bounce. Like he just because he's older. What is he, 32, 33? Like he's already lost a lot of this and he wasn't exactly an explosive guy anyway. Robert Williams, extremely explosive. That guy blocks shots like a monster. And I think there's a little bit of we get to sit on you. Like we get to sit in the paint and wait for you to make your little move and fake like you're going to, shoot it, but then pass it. We get to sit on that. And then when you go up, you can't dunk it on us. So we get to like rotate at the last minute and block your shot or challenge it. And he's just not a good challenger except for our finisher other than when he's wide open.
And he doesn't have a floater.
He doesn't have it. Yep.
Like if he had a floater, how different would the series be? Or at least that particular mechanism. I don't know about the series.
Right.
It's one of the things that you get some things right and you get some things wrong. One of the things that I thought going into the series was, okay, Golden State has more guys available to play, but that can play in the series. But Boston's like rock solid 7 guys are going to be able to play in the series.
Yeah, like they don't have to they don't have to go to plan B. They get to play their plan A 7-guy rotation.
But honestly, it's been switched because Kerr's had to he got the good game from Bjelica.
Yeah.
And then he figured out immediately in game 3 of, oh, nope, they're not going to let us get away with that anymore. He had to pull him immediately. Bjelica's out. Andre Iguodala was a disaster in the game that he played in. Andre Iguodala is out. And going into this game, I think they know that what the Warriors have really done here, or the Celtics have done rather, the Celtics have said, you don't have the firepower to win a track meet. You are not that team from 2016. If you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us with defense, and we don't think you can do it. And that's what I think this game is going to be about, is can Golden State play a good enough defensive game to get the Celtics, who their weak spot is their offense. Of the two units, it's definitely their offense. Right. And their offense can fall apart. Turnovers, like too much.
I would phrase it a little, because for me, the Warriors, I think, can guard them. It just comes at an insane, it costs a lot. In part because Klay Thompson just isn't quite the lockdown defender that he once was. So you have to put a Gary Payton on the court. And to get to score effectively with Gary Payton and Draymond Green both giving you 0 on offense is almost impossible against a great defense. It's almost impossible. So I think the cost, that's what it is they have to go to something that costs so much that it's just in one hand out the other. But I will caution in this one way. In game 1, and I'm not one of these guys that says like the Celtics got lucky. Al Horford, Derek White made a lot of big shots. They were put in position. They had the ability to put themselves as a team into position for those guys to get the easiest looks of their lives, and they converted on them. But we're not that far away, in my opinion, from the series being 2-1 the other direction. I think the Celtics are the better team, and I think the Warriors, I'm very curious to see what their adjustment is because I don't see it. But I do think that I look at this and I go, the Warriors probably have to feel at least somewhat confident that they feel like they could easily be up 2-1 instead of down 2-1.
I agree with you there. I think it's a very close series. Well, I've talked about this so much on Bucket.
I think it's the two best teams. I think
it really is.
The other team that has a case was Milwaukee, but they weren't healthy. But those were the three. As we remove ourselves from it, I thought Phoenix would have been in that conversation. I honestly think they're the two best from each conference.
Yeah, I agree. I like the Warriors to beat the Suns if the Suns had gotten there. We'll never know. And that COVID stuff, I think, is really that's
insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. The report from The Athletic regarding the Suns having a COVID outbreak towards the end of the Mavs series.
Makes sense, though, doesn't it?
It does make you go like, oh, okay.
That's why they lost by 50. Makes sense. Okay.
It's also going to make debating Dallas's offseason and their chances next year fascinating. It's going to be really fascinating.
Here's the thing, Matt. Can I tell you something? The NBA has always been like this. We
I
just
know.
have never talked about it this way. We've always like the team that wins, we're like, they overcame adversity, blah, blah, blah.
They
But
proved
like,
they were the better team.
they proved this or that. Like there's always been something that's happened, and then we just run with the story.
Yeah. And this is why this has been my challenge for so much of since I started doing like hardcore analysis. And especially now, like think about trying to predict this stuff, right? Like sometimes I just laugh at the hilariousness of my job over at Action because it's like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Robert Williams has given up like 1 million Steph threes off of the curl in the regular season. There's no way that he's going to play him in the he's going to play him in the finals. There's no way that they're going to just let Steph Curry shoot. Nope. There's no way if they let Steph Curry shoot that they're going to win. Nope.
Narratives are so funny. I mean, but you're going to hate this one, but it does. By the way, sports are about what happened, not what could have happened. What happened? Like that's what makes sports great. The Raptors, to me, it takes nothing away that they won in 2019, but they had a ball drop in at the literal buzzer of Game 7 that went in, and then they played a team that lost 2 of its best players throughout the course of the series. Like, and again, not taking anything away from them, but and by the way, it's less about the Toronto Raptors and more about Kawhi Leonard, because I do think there's this sense of Kawhi, when he's fully healthy, is this historically great guy. And he might be. I'm not trying to take things away from him. I'm just saying we're so close to him have lost in a Eastern Conference Finals or semifinal game, and his legacy is completely different, probably, than what it is right now. Again, doesn't take. Sports are about what happened, not what could have happened. But the longer I cover this league and the more I see even these series, the more I'm just like, man, all of this stuff hangs on a razor's edge.
Man, well, I'll tell you that this too. I am so often like, well, okay, look, don't just take what the players say as this absolute gospel 100%, because sometimes the players' views are forest and the trees, right? But I always try to have respect for their understanding of it being higher than mine in particular. But this is one thing I think that they do exceptionally well, is if you talk to the players, like they really will get into, no, things were really close. Like we almost lost that series. Like, no, like that team was really good. Like all of those types of things, like the feelings that they have are oftentimes, especially after time goes by, they'll often be like, man, we were really worried we were going to lose that series. Like we could have lost to them easy. That team was really good. You know, there are exceptions where teams are like, we were never going to lose to that team. But I think that to me is always interesting, that I think players understand the margins are much smaller than the narrative that's produced by the result often indicates. I need to get out of here. But thanks for joining us. Thanks, Adam, for your filling us in on the presser and the workout and everything. Have yourselves a great weekend, everybody. We'll be back with another episode on Monday. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On.